Hello everyone and welcome again, or for the first time here to Adobe Live on the Sofa from the UK between 12 and 1, and this is where you'll find us every weekday at that time for some inspiration, some chat and all sorts of other things. Now on that note, if you're watching on YouTube, that is just fine, but you might want to come across to behance.net/Adobe Live, where you can get involved in the chat, you can ask questions and really just hang out with the community. So please, if you can, do it that way. Okay, so today we are joined by Eric Reichbaum. How are you, Eric?
Doing well, thanks for having me, excited to be here.
Awesome, well everybody will be looking forward to finding out a bit more about you and your work. But today, as with every day this week, I'm showing you a quick tip from the new release drop from last week. So let's have a look here in InDesign. Now you might recognize this particular page if you've been watching the stream regularly, which I know many of you have. But I can now send this document for review and get feedback that I can use inside InDesign. To initiate a review is really easy. You go up to the share arrow here at the top of the screen and click and then choose share for review. You can add the email addresses for people that you want to join in the review or create a public link with a password from there. So really easy to do. Now, because this is a quick tip, what I'm going to do here is actually show you one that I made earlier. Okay, so this is a document that, again, you've probably seen before, but I've pushed this one up for review. Now, the reviewers don't need to have Creative Cloud. It's really important that you know that, right? Because they can just go along and use a browser link. And if I just pop into a browser just here it is. And you can see that there are several different marks added here. It's easy to do that. We've got some tools at the top here. So you can click here for this pencil, for example, and draw around something and then add your comment like so. Podcasts. Yeah, there we go. Or yeg. There we go. Really easy to do that. Okay, and you can see all of the different comments here. You can also click on a comment. So if I go down to Julia's here at the beginning, I can click on that and it highlights that particular thing. So nice and easy. Inside of InDesign, you can also go to the window menu, come down to comments, choose review, okay, and the window will open and then you've got a live link through to the comments as they're made. There you go. So that's today's top tip. If you're working with other people, don't email them stuff. It's just clogging up the interwebs. Go ahead and give the review feature a go in the latest drop or release of InDesign. There we are. Okay, back to you then, Eric. Sorry about the small interruption there.
No,
just a detour. We love
just
them.
Just a sort of detour, but you know,
it's a really interesting one too.
It's cool, right?
That specific feature, I think, would have saved me a ton of time. When I want to talk a little bit later about the zine that I worked on recently, like it's going back and forth between me and my designer. Yeah, and having that feature, I think, would have actually saved us a ton of time. So that's super interesting to me.
It is interesting. It is a great thing.
Look at you. Love it. And yeah. Tony, I'm smiling so much already from being back. And I want to say everyone hi to the community. Sorry, Eric, I completely interrupted.
No,
but
just
before we kick start and we miss out on saying hi to people who are in the chat because they're joining us and always chatting away, sometimes on a tangent. But we have, of course, Kirsty, Robert, Steve, Stuart, and we seem to be back in Emma's kitchen. We are indeed, just nice and cozy, changing it up. So I just want to say hi, Andreas, just a bunch of people, Pia as usual. So please ask questions today because I'm so excited about Eric joining us as well. Eric and I used to work together and did a bit of live streaming ourselves on our side of London world. So go ahead, Eric, take it away.
So cool. Yes, Eric, tell us a bit about yourself and what you do. And it is lovely to have Emma back on today. Really lovely.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, Eric. So.
Sure. So, my name is Eric Reichbaum. I'm originally American. I live now between London and Amsterdam. and been here for about 4 years, almost 5 years. Before that, I was living in New York City for a long time, before London, and working mostly as a freelance photographer for about 10 years, doing everything from weddings to red carpet photography, live music, a lot of live music. So I've sort of done pretty much any type of photography you could imagine. Had to be quite flexible trying to live in New York City to make enough money doing photography. So I've done it all. Yeah. So yeah, I thought I'd just go through some of my, sort of like a timeline of some of my work that I used to do and where I've gone through up until today. So I'll share my screen here.
And something not to like underestimate, I really like some of the portraits you were doing because you have this similar, attitude to getting lost a little bit, which is how I also travel. And you used to go a lot to East London and explore around Shoreditch. And I remember you used to do that on the weekends. And it just gave so much personality to some areas of London. And I know you did that in New York as well.
Yeah, so it's definitely one thing I miss when I'm not in London or New York is like sort of the grittiness. Like East London is very artsy and there's like lots of graffiti and lots of interesting people. And then Amsterdam is sort of the opposite. Most of it is like very clean and like, everything looks like the architecture is beautiful. And it's hard to find some of the stuff that I like you were saying, like the characters and the grittiness and that East London is definitely not, that feel is not in Amsterdam too much. But I'll share my screen here and start talking about some of my original, where I got my start. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we're cutting off a little bit.
Yeah, just cutting out a little bit there, but I think we're okay now. Okay,
good. So after I graduated college, I moved to South Korea for a few years, and that's where I really got started with photography. And as you can see here, I used to shoot a lot of live music. In Seoul, there was a really thriving independent music scene, and being one of the only foreigners there on camera, I initially just got really deeply embedded with these bands, and everybody knew me and I knew them. So I got access to just shoot a ton of concerts, and that's when I first realized that a camera could really open a lot of doors.
Tony, does that remind you of your band days?
We have a friend as a photographer. Yeah.
I can see Tony's smiling a little bit, and he's like, "Oh yeah."
I actually bumped into someone outside a supermarket. I kid you not. Last summer, I came walking out of a supermarket in my old hometown. I'd stopped there to visit a friend and was picking something up, and just somebody stopped me outside and said, "Are you Tony Harmer? I photographed you back at this thing," and actually got my email address and emailed me some photos of the gig.
Oh, love it.
That's awesome.
See, Eric, you have to do that for someone now.
Yeah, I love, actually, I'll tell a story in a little bit, but I love the people that I photographed in the past, especially if it's someone random who I don't really know who they are, and then later running into them. And I've often taken prints of photos of people that I've taken portraits of and gone back to try and find them to give them the portrait. Sometimes works, sometimes I can never find them. But yeah, so anyways, this is where I got my start doing a lot of photography, music photography. And then after I left Korea, I had emailed someone at the New York Times wanting to see if I could get a meeting with someone to show my portfolio. And I'd also done a bit of this work doing portraits of people in Korea. So I moved a bit from music to doing a lot of portraits. These are all of elderly Korean people who, in Korea, there's a really high respect for elderly people. So I thought it'd be interesting to photograph a lot of Koreans' older population. And so this series actually was a runner-up in a World Nomads travel competition. So I was really proud of this series of just Korean elders. So I took this and some other stuff and the music, and I sent it to an editor at the New York Times. I think I was 22 and maybe 23. had never shot professionally for a newspaper. I'd done some magazine work in Korea, but thought let's give it a try. She told me, sure, like when you get to New York, let me know. So soon after that, I moved to New York because I knew that I wanted to pursue photography. So I got a meeting with an editor, showed her my stuff. I think I got an assignment the next day to go shoot a concert. So I'll show you that. It was a jazz concert at a small club, and this is the singer Rebecca Martin. So this picture, it was about maybe 2 inches. It was a very small picture in the New York Times, but there's my name for the New York Times. So this sort of opened a ton of doors for me, even though this was the single hardest assignment I've ever done, because it was like a very dark place. It was super crowded, not much space to move around and get different angles. I wasn't happy with any of the photos. I don't think this is a great photo by any means, but it's the one that they chose. It was probably the best one. But now I'm living in New York. I have a photo printed in the New York Times. So this opens up a ton of doors for me, it was, and because it was so bad, this photo wasn't very good. I never got called again. It was the only assignment I got.
Oh no!
And you will never send something again.
No, unfortunately, that was it. But it was good. It was good enough. That led
but Eric, think about all the other newspapers out there.
Exactly. Yeah.
You can move Chrome up a bit, by the way, if you want to, because remember, nobody else can see the bar that you're seeing. So there we go. There we are.
By the way, Eric, everyone's loving this live music vibe already.
Yeah. So this sort of led me. Is that better? Okay.
Yeah. No, that's grand.
This led to a lot of work. And yeah, after I got this, I started getting more work from a lot of agencies, like for red carpet work and event photography. So I'll share some of that work. You might recognize this guy.
Just a bit.
So I got to shoot Elton John at Madison Square Garden, which was incredible. He lets the photographers come up for the first couple songs, and he makes sure that he's looking like right into your camera. Like he's a very good poser for that as a model. This is Katy Perry, Cheryl HINES, David Byrne, one of my favorite singers. This is a comedian and actress.
Oh, she's fantastic, Kristen Shaw.
Yeah, she's so funny.
Yeah.
So I got to shoot a ton of like amazing, well-known people. This is actually just a friend of mine, not a celebrity, but I love that photo.
It's a great shot though.
So yeah, this basically moving to New York, getting that one photo in the New York Times just really opened the doors for me to be able to just take, have so many more assignments, get out there and just really have some incredible opportunities to like be in the same room with celebrities. I would go to like after parties for the Super Bowl with all the athletes and just all this stuff that, like I said at the beginning, like just having that camera opens so many doors. I really like this one of Elvis Costello.
Cool. They're loving these, Eric, by the way. Loving it.
Yeah. So yeah, this sort of led me into realizing that what I really like taking photos of is people in portraiture. So I sort of stopped shooting music because I really love music, but being at a concert with a camera in my hand, I was just so concerned about getting the photos and I wasn't really paying attention to the music or to the concert. So I sort of put that on the side and concentrated on my portraiture work. Sorry, my computer is freezing up a bit.
Okay.
There's Kim Kardashian. And then there's a mixed in with some non-celebrities, but just portraits that I really like. So I went from that in New York, and I did that for, like I said, about 10 years, shooting events and stuff like that. This is an amazing singer from Brooklyn, Reverend Vince Anderson. I invited him over to my friend's apartment where I was staying, and we did a portrait session in the apartment with set up breakfast for him. Took some amazing photos. He was very gracious. But yeah, so I got to meet a ton of cool people because I had a camera and people thought my photos were good enough for them to pose for me or to give me assignments. So I'll share now.
Really great. And what's it like photographing Katy Perry?
So
how was she as a subject?
She was great. That was. Yeah.
Do you have to say that? Did you sign something?
No. Honestly, there weren't many celebrities that I had bad experiences with. Most people were like super gracious, really friendly, and it's all doing that was a very different experiences. Like sometimes I would be on a red carpet and there'd be literally 100 photographers there, everyone trying to get a shot, and you're just getting red carpet shots. Like they may or may not look at your camera. But then other times it would just be me and them in a room, or me and one other photographer, and we'd like take turns, and so we'd actually like interact with the people. And so I got to spend time with some amazing people like Tom Hanks, just like super gracious people that you think like the celebrity is going to be so like out of touch or whatever, or just like they don't care about me, I'm just some photographer. But most people are like very, very gracious, and like they're there to help you and you're there to help them. So yeah, I would say everybody was very, very positive experiences for me. But yeah, when I left New York and moved to London, I left all of that behind, and I stopped doing that like event photography and the red carpet photography. And I actually stopped doing photography for a living mostly. At the company that Emma and I worked at together, I did a lot of photography, but it was much different. It was a lot of product photography, and we did some video shoots and stuff like that, but a completely different world. So then what I did was I moved towards doing my portrait photography for sort of personal work, just for my website, for Instagram, for one project that I want to print a book. So it just became, it freed up me. It allowed me to do what I wanted to do. I didn't have to like go on assignments and take photos for someone else. So I'll share with you some of that work that I feel like that's my favorite stuff that I've done, is like when I just go shoot for myself, not for an assignment. Sorry.
We should pass on some questions from the chat as well in the meantime, because
Sure,
we have a lot of them. There was firstly Kirsty, I think, who was asking how long you've been a photographer for. So when did you start this, and how?
So I started in high school. I think my class was the last class to actually shoot in a darkroom. We actually had film, and then when I graduated, they got rid of the darkroom and moved purely digital. So I did start on film. So that was, I would say, maybe 1998. Yeah, and I actually started using Photoshop then in about 98 or 99. So I've been using Photoshop for a long time. And I still shoot a lot of film. So yeah, then I guess you could say professionally, I started, I guess, when that New York Times, what year was this? I guess I would say about 10 years now, maybe a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, 20 years shooting in general. Yeah, and that's one of the best things about photography to me, is that like you always learn. There's like always something to learn. You know, always new photographers to inspire, to take inspiration from and to learn from, or yeah, I think it's like one of those hobbies that you can never get tired of it. You know, I have a friend who just started, and he's just like fallen head over heels into photography. Like, bought a ton of old film cameras and a ton of lenses, and he's shooting every day. It's just one of those hobbies. I think that it's a bit dangerous, right? Like, you spend a lot of money and a lot of time on it, but yeah, it's amazing.
And talking about this, also investment equipment wise, we have some questions from the chat where, I mean, firstly, I think it was Sean, I'm scrolling up, who was saying wonderful portraits, but he was also asking what lens length you use for your portraits.
So now I almost exclusively, for my digital photography, a few years ago, I used to shoot on all Nikon, and I have a million lenses for every situation and a couple bodies. Then when I moved to Europe, I wanted to pare that down. I wasn't shooting professionally, so I switched to Fuji, just because it's smaller and lightweight. And I sold all my lenses and other bodies. So now I primarily only use a 35 millimeter. This is on a crop sensor body, so it's about a 50 millimeter on a full frame. So I use a 35, 1.4, and sometimes I have a 12 millimeter that I use for some street photography that I'll show in a minute. But that 35 millimeter is great for me. Like it's the perfect length. If I'm up close with someone, it focuses close enough. Like this portrait you see in the background here was with a 35. And it just like, it renders everything so smoothly, and you have great depth of field. So yeah, I would say that's my main lens now. What else do I have? I have, well, when I shoot film, I'm shooting medium format a lot with a 75 millimeter lens, which is about the same length as a 35 on a crop sensor. But yeah, I tend to not switch lenses too much. I go out with what I have, and usually, hopefully that works for the situation.
There you go. And Stuart is saying, I'd be shaking taking celebrity photos or pics. Were you ever intimidated, or what is your feeling when you go to those like assignments? And
sometimes it's intimidating. I mean, like I said, most of the people are so nice that like, even if you're a bit nervous at first, once they start talking to them, they let your guard down. I mean, I think Tom Hanks was probably the one that I was the most nervous about, because I was actually spending a ton of time with him, like a full day. Wow. And I was just an assistant on that shoot. I wasn't actually shooting. That was with a Broadway photographer named Joan Marcus, who is like the Broadway photographer. But he like came into the room, and he was so friendly and nice and talked to everyone. And he was just as you would expect Tom Hanks to be, like just like the happiest, nicest guy. So yeah, I mean, after that initial nervousness passes, I think it's just like anyone else. It's just someone there they're there to do a job, and you're there to do a job.
Awesome. I love how chilled you are about it.
No, I couldn't be in the same room as Katy Perry. I really couldn't. Well, mainly because of the injunction. I'm not allowed within quarter of a mile. Sorry. That's my dad joke for today. Right, moving on.
Well, it went down well. Are you loading
your? A pretty big star. I'm trying. My slide has frozen. Yeah.
And where like your connection has been on and off.
For everybody, if you want to get hold of Eric's links, by the way, Tim will pop all of those into the chat. So Eric has a couple of Instagram accounts. We'll talk about one of them a bit later on, actually. But yeah, Tim will pop those in for us. And don't forget that if you are joining us today for the first time, and even if you've been along a few times before, the conversation doesn't have to end with the end of the stream. We have our fabulous Discord where you can talk all day and all night if you like. And I noticed that some people, mainly because they come from all different parts of the world, actually do that. So yeah, join our Discord. And again, Tim has popped that link into the chat for you. And by the way, if you're looking on YouTube and you're thinking, but there's nothing in the chat here, come across to behance.net/Adobe Live.
What are you talking about?
Exactly, you know, but it's...
He's gone mad.
Gone.
All right. I mean, Eric, I think you're...
Hey, can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
You can see your screen. Yeah, we're still seeing loading.
Yeah,
we're still seeing loading.
Sorry.
What you could do is does it showing okay in your browser?
Oh, it's frozen now.
Yeah.
Oh,
if it's showing okay in your browser, what you could do very quickly if you wanted to is stop the screen share and just restart the screen share.
Maybe I'll stop sharing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me do that real quick.
All right.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Hey, don't worry. We're all at home. We've all got, you know, there's all the different things that come along with being at home. We're relaxed.
Yeah.
Everybody's really enjoying what you're doing. So, you know, and loving your work. So
and some storytelling as well from everyone and their experience taking concert photos and spending time with bands. Sandrine gave us a little bit of a story on taking photos.
when she was
at
following a
context
punk band. Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, that sounds really stalkish. I was following them on that.
Well, I think it was with their consent, which is kind of okay, really.
I mean, please confirm, Sandrine.
Yeah, I think if she's just on the edge of the stage and the band are playing and going, "Who's that?" Then maybe so. When they're there every night, worrying.
Driving behind the van, is that? Oh, no, I think it's all right. And we have new people joining I haven't seen before. I mean, I don't know. I've been away for a couple of weeks, so I haven't seen some, these new joiners. Great to see you guys. Technology, yes, Stuart. I know.
There you are. That's how it works. Steve's here. Steve Steve joins us from New Zealand every day, which is just great.
I hope we are delivering, Steve. It's worth it.
It's just lovely.
Keep coming back. Yeah.
What time is it in New Zealand? Are they about 12 hours ahead?
I don't know. Tell us, Steve. Hey, Steve. Tell us what time is it there? Is it about 11 in New Zealand or? Yes, it is.
It says Tim.
Hang on a minute. The time fairy was in my ear. Thank you, thank you, time fairy. Yes, in fact, it is that time in New Zealand. So it's 11:30. There we go.
And Sandrine is saying, "I was invited." As a guest.
There you go. I could tell you an amusing story about a friend of mine, a band photographer, at some point if you want.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
you've got loads of stories to pull up.
Well, if are you struggling for a minute? Do you want me to tell you just for a minute?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So a friend of mine used to photograph for the magazine Loaded, and he'd get assignments all over the place, do a lot of reportage work, and he'd also do gig stuff like he did the Spice Girls when they were. So they were marketed in Japan first as a test market, and he followed them around at all the venues they played there. But one night he was at Madison Square Garden when Nirvana were playing, and he just caught a backstage shot with Kurt Cobain hugging a friend. Now the friend was an adult actor called Tracy Lords, and the picture got picked up by the American press and syndicated, and they started suggesting that Kurt Cobain was having an affair with Tracy Lords, which caused, of course, friction. And at some point later, he got an assignment to go and photograph her. And he was there setting up his lights and everything else like that, getting ready and just chatting to her. And he said, "Oh, I photographed you before," because he was unaware of the press situation at the time. He said, "I photographed you before, actually. I saw you with Kurt at Madison Square Garden." And she flew off the sofa and she started wailing on him. And her manager had to drag her off. She was screaming all sorts of things at him. I mean, it ended well, right? It ended well because she understood he knew nothing about it. But yeah, he got beaten up by an adult actor from a gig photo. But there you are.
Oh my God.
If you're watching, Tony.
That is a good story. I don't have any but.
Oh, there you go.
It.
Right, how's it resolving?
I just restarted Chrome. I think we should be fine in a minute, but I can tell. I don't have a story that good, but I do have one that's semi interesting. I was going to shoot a party at a hotel, and I was hired by a magazine, and they told me that there was going to be some celebrities there that they wanted pictures of, not portraits. And it was the Olsen twins from Full House. Yeah. Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen. And it was their sister's launch of one of her clothing lines. And when I got there, their press agent basically told me, "You are not allowed to take pictures of them. Like they don't want this to be about them. They want it to be about their sister. So no pictures of the twins." I said, "Okay," but I knew I was hired to take pictures of them. Like, what am I going to do if I come back with no pictures? So I snuck around with one of the other photographers who was, I guess, their actual photographer. Yeah. And basically, I just peeped over his shoulder and he was taking a picture of them. I got a picture. They're looking into the camera. They're smiling. I went home, sent it to the magazine. The next day it was on the cover of people.com's website.
Ooh.
And I got an angry call from someone that they worked with, telling me that they were going to sue me and I better take it down and all this. And in the end, you know, I said, I didn't publish it. I don't work for people.com. Like they publish, like you know, and I didn't break any laws.
Eric.
So the moral of the story is, well, not the moral, but the fun thing about the story is that the Olsen twins for a few minutes knew who I was. So that was exciting.
So they're not going to call you up to do their...
No, I don't think they'll ever hire me for anything.
I'm questioning your relationship with any of your clients.
Yeah.
Your like retention's not very good.
I know.
We need to work on it.
All right, I think we're back here.
Okay.
So,
here we go.
If you can see this.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Sorry.
And remember, you're
that.
okay to come up the screen a bit. So that's it. Perfect. There we go.
Okay.
Woo-hoo.
So, like I was saying, I went from doing assignments like that of the Olsen twins and whatever, and things that were, you know, sometimes stressful and, you know, you have to get the shot to please the client or whatever, to then shooting just stuff that I wanted to do. So this is a guy named Fred who I met on the southern coast of England. He's a fisherman. He was a fisherman. He sadly died about a year ago. But I just started chatting with him and asked if I could take his photo, and he's, you know, just the nicest guy, and allowed me to photograph him. And here's him making some sort of fishing net. And I ended up making this relationship with this guy and going back multiple times and photographing him every time. And, you know, just sort of got to know him a bit in this small little town called Hastings. Super nice guy. But then this is what I really enjoyed doing when I realized, like, okay, I can create like an actual relationship with people. Sometimes it's just for a minute. Sometimes I just meet someone on the street, say, hey, can I take your photo? And take it, and then they're gone and I never see them again. Other times, like with this guy, like I probably photographed him 6 times or something over the course of a couple of years. This is another guy that I met in the same town. So Hastings is a place that I've gone to a lot. And if people not from England, it's a small, sort of like an old fishing town on the southern coast of England, southeastern coast of England. And I just went there. It's not a very touristy place. So being an American there, you know, people were like, who's this American with a camera? And people started to like, you know, invite me into their lives a bit and allow me to photograph them. And just, so this is like the style that I really like a lot now. These like very tight portraits, of people who like their faces have stories to tell. You know, you can't, I don't know what this lady's story is, but just looking at her and her jewelry and her like blue eyes and the intensity in her face, just like these portraits to me are like really just, they all just tell stories, and you can take from it whatever you like and make up your own story. So this is what I've done a lot of recently, is just these very intense portraits, I would say. But each one of these people, so like this guy is another guy that I photographed a few times. He's a mechanic. He fixes race cars, like super expensive Formula race cars. But he's, you know, when he told me about that, he said, I've never driven one in my life, but I know how to fix everything. So every one of these people has a story, you know. This guy was someone that I just met literally for a minute. He asked me for money. I gave him £1 and I said, can I take your photo? I got this portrait that I love. And then he just walked away and I never saw him again.
It's really haunting, isn't it? That work is really haunting.
Yeah. And for this one, if people are interested in a little bit of the gear side of things, I usually don't do this, but for this time I went out with a flash, a speed light flash with a small softbox. So this one I was actually holding the camera in one hand or actually this way, and holding the flash above the camera, and shooting with like high-speed sync with the electronic shutter. So this is probably
just
like
to fill.
Yeah. So if you see on the top of his lights, on the top of his eyes, you see a little bit of a catch light from the softbox, and just to fill in his face a bit. Something that is sort of like the street style of like Bruce Gilden and some of the New York photographers who go out with flashes, which I don't often do because I try to be a bit less conspicuous, but in this case I did. And the results are pretty good, I think. This is another person in London that I just met. Interesting story with her is that most people, like I find when I ask people if I can take their portrait, they're either super open to it and just say sure, and that's it, or they say no, and that's it. But this person was like really, she couldn't believe that I wanted to take her photo. She's like, why me? You know, like I'm not pretty. She was very self-conscious. She didn't know why I wanted to take her photo. I just had this conversation. I said, like, you know, I think you're interesting. I think you are pretty. Like, let me take your photo. And after like a couple minute conversation, she agreed. And we had like a really nice conversation. But then again, this was someone that I never saw again. But I think this portrait's just like super powerful. Again, just like it tells a story. This guy, someone I found in London through like a model website. And he's one of these guys who he was game for anything. Like we've gone out and shot a couple times, and he just has this like super intense smile with these, you know, his teeth are just insane, and he takes his intensity and uses it. Like he's a model, and he goes out, and he's maybe not what most people think of as a model, like a traditional model, but he was like the type of model that I was looking for something like this, just like a bit like, you know, how many people would I say, like, go put your chin in between these two fence posts and pose for a picture? And he was like, sure, you know, like he's up for anything. This is someone that I met in London on the street. He's an East London guy that I saw a lot, and he's usually asking for money. And one time I saw him walking his dog, and I just stopped him and I asked if I could take his photo. We got to talking. And so this is a guy who I literally just thought was a homeless guy in the street. You know, that's all I thought. And when we started talking, he was like, you know, he's like, my name's John Dolan. Like, when you get home, Google me. And this guy's done a TED Talk. He is a homeless guy, but he's an artist. And he's done a TED Talk about his artwork and stuff. Wow. Super impressive story that he has. But yeah, it's these conversations that you get to have with people when you stop and ask if you can take their picture. You know, I've walked by him 100 times and never talked to him until this time. And yeah, I got to learn his completely interesting story. So then this is the first picture of a new project that not new. I've been working on this project for about 4 years. There's a market in London called Ridley Road Market. And it's one of the most interesting places for me, I think, to just be, and then especially to photograph. But it's sort of disappearing, like a lot of things. It's like they're trying to knock it down to build new apartments, and so a lot of the shop owners and stall owners are moving, are getting forced out. So I shoot there a lot. I've been doing it for 4 years, and this is like the first book that I really want to do is going to be from this market. So this guy, and most of the time in the market, it's super busy. You don't get a lot of portraits because people are busy. They're there to shop, or the people that are working are there to make money. But I always just carry my camera, and I'm usually just taking like street style candid shots. This guy called me over. He saw my camera. He said, come over here, take my picture. And he was standing in front of this jewelry store. So all this gold behind him is like gold hanging in the window of a jewelry store. And he just like had this intense look, and, you know, all the smoke billowing around him. This was, I looked at the back of my camera after this, and I was just like, wow, like I knew this was such a great photo. I love this shot. So yeah, this is from the market. And then this is a bit of a different style from the previous ones, but these are, most of the photos from the market that I've done are of this style. So this is with a 12 millimeter lens. So these are shots that I take usually without talking to people. It's just very candid shots on the street. But this market's so colorful, like the people there, it's a very diverse market, but like look at the color of the clothes she's wearing. Like everyone in this market is just like, there's so much color and diversity, and I just really love shooting there. So hopefully someday in the next year, I hope to produce a book with everything from this market. Okay. Then
someone in the chat asked,
sure, yeah.
Jackie was saying, do you have a book of extraordinary, ordinary people, their stories?
Do I? No, I don't. I mean, I could.
Humans and...
Yeah. I probably could. This photo, so like I was saying before, sometimes I'll take a photo and then see the person later, or, you know, randomly. So this photo, I took this photo on the street, I think when I first moved to London. I just like came upon this woman sitting in a bus stop, took the photo, kept walking. I think this was the only photo, or maybe I took a couple. But she didn't even see me. That was it. I posted it on Instagram. Maybe a couple months later, I got a message from Time Out London, the magazine, saying that this photo was chosen by Martin Parr, who's a really well-known London photographer, well-known around the world. And he chose this photo as like the top winning photo for a competition that they were doing for Time Out magazine. So this photo was published, full-page photo in Time Out London. I got to go to, this is her again. Later, I met her, and I went up to her and I said, I don't know if you know, but your photo was in a magazine. I took your photo. And she was so happy, you know, to meet me. She's like, oh, like all my friends saw it and sent it to me. And like, I was famous for a couple of weeks. But this woman was amazing. Like, look at that makeup and like the intensity and like the lines in her face. Like, she had so many stories. I don't know if any of them were true, but she claimed she dated someone in the Rolling Stones and just had all these amazing stories to tell. But yeah, so this is, because of that photo was published in this magazine, it was also on display at the Barbican in London for this photo show called Strange and Familiar, which was all expats or non-British people's photos of the UK. And so I got to meet Martin Parr there, and that's Bruce Gilden on the left, who's a very famous New York street photographer. So yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, like, always have your camera with you. You never know. Like that photo, I had no idea that you know, this would lead to being published in a magazine and meet these two photographers who I idolize and really respect. Yeah, so that's
so cool.
It's just like another door that the camera opens. You know, I know I keep saying that, but it's so true that, you know, just taking photos opens so many doors and just is able to change your life. Okay, so with that, I'll start talking about, do we have any other questions before I move to something new?
We have some great, go ahead.
No, Emma, you've been scanning. I've just been soaking it up.
Yeah, I'm on like a different, so yeah, comments of all your portraits, great characterful face, new words, Robert, thank you. Yeah, just amazing work from Andreas. Saying observation and photo. Yeah. So yeah, no other questions, just great comments. Asking how much work do you do, Eric? Are you a purist, or will you go into Photoshop or Lightroom and tweak the RAWs?
Yeah, I'm definitely not a purist. I use Lightroom a ton, which I'm about to go into. I don't use Photoshop as much anymore. So I guess I'm a purist in ways where I'm not removing things from photos usually, or adding things. I don't do composites or anything like that. I mean, I have in the past, but yeah, I think most of my Lightroom work is just, you know, adjusting highlights and balances and, you know, white balance. I use a lot of presets to try and get like a film style look to the images, or if I want to change it to black and white. But yeah, I don't do a lot of Photoshop work anymore. So in some senses, I'm a purist about some things. Like, I don't like manipulating photos. But yeah, I definitely always adjust. I feel like Lightroom is literally like my lifeblood when it comes to photography.
I think that's the thing, right? It's the difference when people say tweak. Do they mean manipulation, which is one thing, right? Or do they mean processing? And if they mean processing, which is clearly what you're doing here, people have done that with film. Everything they shot wasn't exactly right. You'd have to still, you know, do the strip test, dodge and burn where was necessary in exposure, you know. So I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah, like if you ever look at a one of like Ansel Adams or any of the old famous black and white photography, if you look at their prints where they have notes on everything for like how many seconds in each area they're dodging and burning. I mean, they were manipulating way more than people realize for those photos.
Yeah.
So to me, that stuff is all legit. I don't think it takes away from images. Of course, you have different conversations if you're doing news work or editorial stuff or, you know, things like that. You don't want to change much. But yeah, for me, it's mostly just, like you said, light processing stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to talk about my new project,
Yes, let's talk
which
about
is a
it.
photo zine. It's called Souvenirs.
And it looks amazing.
Thank you.
Sold out.
But, and it's sold out, guys. Yeah, don't get too excited.
The first issue sold out. We're going to do a second issue soon. So this was an idea that I had when I was back. I was actually stuck back in America from March, April, and May. I went home for my bachelor party, and the flight home to Europe got canceled. So I had a ton of time on my hands. I was living at my parents' house, so I wasn't spending much money. So I had free time and some extra money. So I thought, like, I want to print a zine. Like, it's something that I want to do for a while. But because like there was so much happening in the world, I wanted to do it for charity, and I wanted to include other photographers. So I just posted a thing on Instagram asking for submissions. And I think the whole process from like the time that I came up with the idea to the time I got submissions was maybe 3 days, and then editing and sending to the printer was about another week. So it was like a super fast process, because I was at that point, I knew that I was leaving the US on June 1st. So I had to finish it, get it printed, and mail it before I left. So this, what you see in Lightroom here, and this is a completely different use of Lightroom than this is not editing or anything. But what I do a lot of with my own photos, but especially in this case, I had 68 photos submitted from people, I think 20 different photographers. So I put them all in Lightroom, and then I go through one by one, and I give star ratings. And this is what I do with my own photos when I get back from a day shooting. And so then I can then filter and say like, okay, let's go just to 2 or more. And now I'm down to 62 photos. And then I go through again, and I add, and then I choose the ones that are 3 stars. And now I'm down to 58. And then I know that I could only have about 40 in the book. So I keep going and I edit more. So then the 4 stars, I get down to 43. So this is what I use Lightroom for this project, was the culling and editing, which I do a lot for my own stuff, which to me is like one of the hardest parts of shooting is deciding which one of those, you know, if I have 25 photos of someone that I take one day, which one do I actually post on Instagram or on my website? It's the hardest part. But yeah, this made it super easy. So I whittled this down from 68 to these 43. And then I sent them all to my designer, a guy named Brandon Ferrant, who also, he saw my call for submissions, and he messaged me and said, hey, if you need a designer, I'm here to help. And he did, and he gave a ton of his time designing, which was amazing.
Because you were going to do everything yourself on this.
Yeah,
you were telling
initially
me.
I wanted to do it all myself. I'm not a designer by any means, so I don't know how it would have turned out if I did that. I'm sure I would have taught myself, but it wouldn't have looked nearly as good. So what Brandon did was put this all in InDesign and sent me this. And this is the final version, but we went through tons of back and forth. This is why I was saying at the beginning that that feature that you showed with the commenting and everything, if we would have had that, it would have saved us a lot of time.
We got it for the next one.
Exactly. Now we have it. Which is great. So Brandon, this is, like I said, the final version, but he sent me this, and so we went back and forth, you know, with different layouts. You know, I told him, can you move this photo here, or make this one bigger, make this one smaller? So it was very collaborative. And then the printer actually had a template, so all of these lines that Brandon has in here was, you know, from the printer. So they made it very easy. But yeah, so the theme of this zine was isolation. So I wanted photographers to just take that theme and choose whatever they wanted. So some of these photos might be very old. This one from Matt Weber, I think is from, looks like it's Coney Island, and it's probably an old photo. This one from Amy Touchette, who's an amazing New York street photographer. This is during COVID, during quarantine. So some of them are recent, some of them are older. These photos from Spencer Murphy, who's an amazing photographer in the UK. He's been shooting a ton during quarantine, and I believe he's making a book. He sent me his site, and he was like, just choose which photos you want. And it was so hard to choose. I think he has the most photos in the zine. I included about 4 or 5 of his. This is a portrait I did when I was back in Pittsburgh in the States. I just posted on Facebook and some photography groups asking for portrait models, and these guys messaged me. So I wanted to take a bunch of portraits of people through their windows in their homes while they were quarantining. So yeah, we got an amazing group of photographers, really cool photos. Yeah, like I said, unfortunately, I mean, it's great, but unfortunately for anyone watching, this is sold out, which is amazing. We sold over 100 copies. I think we raised almost $1,000 for a charity called City Harvest, which feeds hungry people in New York City.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it was a really successful project. I was really happy with it. So the next issue we think is going to come out hopefully in September. I'm just about to do another call for submissions. And that issue is going to be only including photos, and we might even include some poetry and some prose, but only from Black photographers and Indigenous and people of color. So this time we're going to sit back and we are going to basically let Black photographers tell the story of what's happening now, which I think is an important thing to do, to sort of as a white photographer, this is not my story to tell. So I want to let other people tell the story. So that's going to be the theme. The theme is going to be called Power, and then people can do whatever they want with that theme. But yeah, that's going to be the next issue. So I'm going to be doing, asking for submissions. So if anyone watching is interested, you can send me messages on Instagram, on the Souvenir Zine, or on my personal Instagram. That would be amazing.
Cool. Tim's just adding that link to the chat just now. So there we are. You've got it. I think
this is global as well. You're looking for I'm looking for
photographers or writers from anywhere. So the last one I know we had photographers from at least 4 or 5 countries. One from China, a bunch from the UK, the Netherlands, a lot from the States, Canada. So yeah, and worldwide. This issue we only shipped to the US and the Netherlands and England. But for this next one, yeah, we'll open it up worldwide shipping as well. So that'd be great. If anyone watching is interested in submitting, please do get in touch.
No, I love that you're doing this, and you're picking topics that are important right now, but also not giving that platform to a lot of photographers. And being a photographer yourself, I think you can appreciate all this work. But the fact that you're also tying into a charity is amazing. So I think that's just an awesome initiative.
Yeah, that was really important. So I think the next one, I haven't decided exactly which charity to do yet, but
that was going to be my next question.
Yeah, there's a few that I'm weighing. So here's you can actually pre-order the zine on this first link if you want to pre-order. And then these are the Instagram, the zine, my personal one, and this is the designer's Instagram. Yeah, so I'm trying to decide which charity to do, but it's definitely something tied to the Black Lives Matter movement or like the Southern Poverty, some sort of initiative that's going to be helping this current cause.
ACLU might be a good one.
Something like that. We might actually split it too. I'd actually love to do some for America and also some for the UK or the Netherlands, just because that's where a lot of the photographers that I work with and where I'm living now too. So. Yeah, I'm excited. I hope the next one's just as successful as the first one.
And Eric, this is a long-term project you were telling me, because I was asking you as well when we were chatting last week that, is this, you kind of launched the first copy and issue and you were just, okay, check, I've done this, because you said that's something you wanted to do for a long time. But actually you always had this plan of doing several issues and, covering different topics and things that were meaning a lot to you.
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to be a long-term thing. I always wanted to do more issues. Like even when we printed the first one, we wrote issue 1 on it, but we had no idea how it would sell. I bought 130 copies. I think I sent one to each photographer. but I had no idea, like, what if I only sell 20 and then I lose all the money that I put into it. But thankfully that didn't happen. Thankfully it sold out, which is now going to allow us to do a second one. So yeah, it's really, really made me happy.
That's so cool.
Awesome. I love that you're doing that.
So cool. So I'll tell you what, Eric, what you could do, if you like, is you could make that, you can actually play that presentation, that slide just there, just to, in case people are watching on their phone, just to make it a bit easier to see the links. A bit, there we go.
There you go.
That way,
yeah, and the souvenirs Instagram is great, and I also love the name. So I think you did I know he's not with you. I can't remember his name, your designer, but he's Brandon. Yeah, did an awesome job.
Yeah, he's done a really good job.
Fabulous. The in the last 24 hours, of course, press photographers have been having a difficult time in the US in some cities. You might have noticed that's. I know we've got a couple of people who've done press work. In the chat as well. So that's
it's rough right now. I mean, I have a lot of
dodgy
friends.
ground. That
it's hard for sure. I have a lot of friends in New York who are out there shooting on the streets every day for the past few weeks, and I don't envy that job right now. It's intense, but I mean, I think those people are telling really important stories with those photos, so I'm glad people are out there doing it for sure.
It's just, it should be more like press photography, less like war photography, which is
that's the scary thing. It looks like war photography.
Really, really tough, really hard. Well, I hope your projects work out really, really well. I mean, that's just amazing.
Thank you.
That you sold out souvenir or souvenirs in just that short amount of time. So that's excellent. I really look forward to the project. And if in the chat, if you get the chance to spread this to people that you think could do with hearing about this, if they've not seen this particular live stream and you think, so this would work really well for so and so, insert name of friend or colleague here, then do bring their attention to it. It's really important to do that. Okay, 100%. Emma,
what a session. Loved it. I loved being back. It was great. And we're going to have some really exciting things coming up as well. Still your session, obviously Friday. And next week we have a new co-host. Usually I shy away from saying, sneak peeks. But
and it's somebody I used to work with. Yeah.
Oh, Tony, I love it. But thank you so much, Eric. I mean, it was just so great diving into your world.
It's been great, man.
I really appreciate it. It's great talking with you.
Really
hearing
great.
some of your stories. So thanks for joining. It's so nice to see you again. Tony, you can wrap it up.
So there we go, everybody. Thank you very much, Eric, and really lovely to see you here again, Emma, as well. But for now, we are about wrapped up. Don't forget, the conversation doesn't have to stop here. Join our Discord. I've just seen that link pop in front of my right eye, so I know that you've got it out there. And come along and chat with us. You can chat all day, all night, as long as you want. And people share work there as well, share ideas. Great thing to do. Tomorrow it's back to me for, are we still calling it the Tony Harmer Show? Whatever, or should we just call it Friday with Tony's? I don't know.
No, it's the Tony Harmer Show. Excuse me.
Okay, so back for the Tony Harmer Show tomorrow. We'll be doing all manner of crazy stuff tomorrow, and I'm promising you a whole bunch of shortcuts that you can access. There you go. Which people keep asking for. But for now, we're done. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. Stay creative. Toodaloo.
Thanks. Bye.